So, you want to learn about bow, huh? Heard it was like ranged greatsword and the easiest of the gunner weapons? Unfortunately, no, it's the opposite. One thing came up consistently while I was writing the script for this guide. Bow is complicated as heck. Despite what it seems like on the surface, really good bow players have to juggle a bunch of things in their head, both in and out of the hunt, in order to get really good at bow. Fortunately for you, you have this guide. Time to make your bow play less of a way to wrap gifts and more of an actual threat. Let's hop directly to general controls. Press and hold X or R to begin charging a shot. You can change which button to use in settings, under bow control mode. Type 1 fires with X, and Type 2 fires with R. Charging and holding a shot continuously drains stamina. While you charge, you'll see a charging aura on your right hand. This aura flashes and changes color the longer you charge. In most cases, up to 2 times. No aura is level 1, red is 2, yellow-orange is 3, and on certain bows, white is 4. Release the charge shot button to fire a shot of that charge level. There's a bunch of details surrounding charge levels, but I'm gonna finish explaining the base kit before we really get into the weeds. Also, really important, you can move around while charging, unlike Greatsword and more like Hammer. You can aim your shot by pressing and holding whatever the opposite button of your charge shot button is. R for Type 1, or X for Type 2. Note that the aiming line is not representative of where your shot will actually go. Try to build a mental model of how your arrows will fly. Also, your aiming settings can be changed. Try and experiment with a bunch of aiming settings to find your preferred way of injecting the pointy stick into a monster. You can perform 2 different attacks by pressing A before or after you fire a shot. Press A before you fire a shot to fire an arc shot, raining down pellets on a target area. These pellets deal extremely light amounts of damage, KO, and exhaust. Spoiler alert, you'll never use or care about these, most of the time. Press A after you fire a shot to consume a chunk of stamina and fire a power shot, which fires a shot 1 level above the charge you just fired at a slightly lower trajectory and higher velocity. Note that the power shot will only fire charges you have access to, so it won't fire a level 4 charge if you only have access to level 3 charge at max. Pressing A normally makes you perform the arrow swipe, which is functionally useless. For an extra dash of uselessness, you can press A again for arrow swipe too. The one pale spot about these attacks is that they can sever tails. You can also attack small monsters with them, I guess? Please don't use this seriously otherwise. While you're selecting an item from the item bar, you can press X and B to switch between the coatings you have. Press X and A with a coating selected to equip the coating on your bow, lending its effects to your arrows. You can tell that a coating is equipped by looking in the top left under your stamina bar or above your item bar. Each shot fired, including arc shots for some goddamn reason, consumes a coating. So, 50 power coating level 2s will grant 50 shots boosted attack. You can swap coatings in order to unequip them as well. Unlike most other weapons, bow has a unique dodge ability. Press B while not pressing on the control stick to perform a hop backwards. Press B again immediately afterwards to perform a back roll, after which you can press on your charge shot button to immediately charge to level 3. While you're charging, you can also dodge out of that charge by pressing Y instead of B. Finally, you can do other things when you jump off of a ledge, but even looking at these is not safe for life, so I'm gonna blur these out. Press X in midair to perform a midair shot, using your charge level 2 shot to deal damage. Press A instead to perform a jumping arrow swipe. With the base moveset covered, we can move into the meat and potatoes of bow with some arrow tips. Get your popcorn, this will be a pretty detailed explanation. The big thing about gunning in Monster Hunter is that you can't just stand across the entire area and take pot shots at the monster. No, in this game, projectile damage varies with the distance it travels. Hit too far away and you'll receive a crippling minus 50% damage modifier. Get a bit closer and that penalty reduces to 20%. If you're too close or too far, no changes. Where it gets interesting is when you hit just right. Hit in what we call critical distance, and your shot gains a plus 50% attack modifier, and makes your screen shake, giving you extra feedback that you did the good. Each arrow type has a different critical distance. With that explanation packaged away, time to move on to charges and arrow types. Take a gander at your bow's equipment details, and you'll see on page 6 the charge shot details. In this game, the arrow type you fire is linked to your charge level, which varies from bow to bow. For example, let's take a look at the Petrified Bow level 1. According to this chart, you fire a rapid level 1 shot at charge level 1, another rapid level 1 shot at charge level 2, and a rapid level 2 shot at charge level 3. Here we come to our first big lesson about charge levels. You may look at the first two charge levels and be like, they fire the same exact shot, so does shooting charge level 2 have no benefits over charge level 1? Au contraire. Not only does charging a shot change it, but it also provides a damage modifier that increases with charge level. Most bows naturally have 3 levels of charge, and in general, you'll want to pay attention to the 3rd level of charge when looking at bows. This charge mechanic is also why good bow players don't just spam the 1st level of charge all the time. Next, let's explain just what the heck that rapid level 1 thing means. That is the arrow type that you'll fire, combined with the shot level. Obviously, higher shot levels are more powerful than lower shot levels, but different arrow types are meant to fill specific niches. Let's cover them now. Rapid is, or was, the premier shot type of bows. You shoot arrows that spread vertically, up and down, that each hit the monster once. Higher shot levels add more arrows per volley, from 1 to 4. These arrows are added below the main arrow. Critical distance is roughly 2 to 4 backsteps from the monster. This is a good general use shot, since it's capable of focusing on a specific weak spot. Pierce functions as you would expect. You shoot a single arrow that is unaffected by gravity. This arrow deals damage multiple times before disappearing. Higher shot levels add more hits, from 3 at level 1 to 5 at level 3. Levels 4 and 5 extend the critical distance. Obviously, critical distance for Pierce type arrows starts a bit later, but lasts a bit longer than the other arrow types. It starts at around 3 back hops, and lasts for quite a long time. Pierce is intended to be used on monsters with long and squishy hit zones. Spread shoots multiple arrows in a horizontal pattern, left to right, that each hit once. Higher shot levels add more arrows to either end of the pattern, and increase their damage. Critical distance is on the shorter side. While it's not point blank, it starts at roughly 1 back hop and lasts until 2 back hops. Spread is meant to be used on particular monsters where the profile can maximize effectiveness. Basically, wide monsters. But it can be used against some of the same monsters that Rapid is used on. Heavy is, currently, the only arrow type unique to Generations. It shoots one big chonker's arrow that is greatly affected by gravity. Higher shot levels increase its damage. Heavy's critical distance starts at around 2 back hops and never stops, probably because gravity is more likely to stop your arrow. Heavy also has 2 unique properties for an arrow. One is that it has a stagger modifier, causing more flinches and part breaks. The second is that heavy arrows can't be negated by monster effects. For example, Kushala Daora's Wind Aura and Stonefist Terminator's Huge Claw can eat most projectiles, except for Heavy. You'll deal the damage regardless. Heavy can be used everywhere Rapid is, but it can have a bit of a learning curve, especially if you're used to the other arrow types. Just try to aim slightly higher than what you think you need for Rapid. Alright, we've covered the main shot types, which means we now have to cover the arc shot for completion's sake. Don't worry, this won't take long. Like your normal shots, arc shots differ per bow. You can see what arc shot your bow supports on the first page of its details. Unlike normal shots, arc shots do not change per charge level, instead firing at a greater distance from charge 2 to charge 3. They also all deal KO and exhaust damage as well. You can't fire them instantly like you can with regular shots, but they still benefit from the charge modifiers. What they don't have is critical distance. Arc shot focus rains down pellets over a tight area. Arc shot wide rains down pellets over a wider area. Finally, Arcshot Blast launches an explosive arrow that explodes on contact. Despite it exploding, it deals normal shot type damage, not fixed. Alright, we're at the other end of the tunnel, so now we know a lot more about bow than we did like 5 minutes ago. So how does bow actually play? Bow's on the more mobile side. Its windows of commitment are broken up into readying the arrow and shooting the arrow, both of which individually don't take up much time, unlike the bowguns where you have to take time to fire shots, potentially multiple. Actually doing damage is a simple affair. Keep the monster at arm's length, or more, then aim at the weak spot and fire. A large part of playing bow is stamina management. Like hammer, bow constantly consumes stamina while charging and holding shots, Good players will be able to effectively juggle stamina considerations with positioning to walk out of the way of attacks, as well as predicting windows of opportunity to begin charging and firing shots. Of course, you likely won't grasp this right away. When you're just starting out, here's a good tip. Remember your ABCs. Always be charging. You won't be able to charge up that much if you're really low on stamina, but always charging will let you take advantage of any windows of opportunity you see, rather than watching the monster taunt or something while you don't have any shot charged up. Also, do not spam level 1 charge attacks. You're almost quartering your damage if you do that, so don't. And yes, Mega Dash uses exists, but they only solve the stamina problem. If you can't actually position or make use of windows of opportunity, then you can't play bow effectively. Keep in mind that shot hit zones can often be very different from the Blade Master's weak zones, and in this game it's kinda hard to tell good hit zones from bad hit zones. You used to be able to tell, judging from the size of the hit flash. The larger the hit flash, the better the zone you hit. GU's flashiness makes this really hard though, so I suggest going online and confirming the shot hit zones before hunting anything. If you're looking for some aiming tips, remember 1, 2, 3. 1. Face your character in the general direction you want to shoot. 2. Press the aim button and adjust your aim so you'll hit the weak spot. And 3. Release the fire. One more tip. Power shots are really strong in GU, but try to resist the urge to mash A. If you do, you can end up wasting your shot entirely because the monster can flinch and its animation may just make it dodge your hasty power shot. Be patient. Or if you're gamer enough, count the amount of arrows it takes to stagger a monster and keep it in mind. Technically, this trick works for all weapons, but gunner weapons are particularly effective at this stagger counting. If you really hate monster staggers ruining your perfect power shots, you can readjust slightly. This is technically a glitch, but if you use your right stick to swing your camera around as you fire power shots, you can slightly readjust them. This re-aim glitch is a fairly advanced technique, and you absolutely don't have to use this. It's just nice to know about. Finally, here's a bunch of miscellaneous cool things about bow. You sheath slightly faster if you do not move while sheathing. This can be useful against monsters like Rajang because it'll get you running a bit faster to dodge stuff like his Blanka Ball. Also, if you load files before you flinch from a roar, you'll save on time because the loading happens at the start of the animation. Also, in a similar fashion, if you start crafting coatings before a monster roar, you can continue to do so while the monster roars and you're flinching from it. Finally, the food skill Feline Temper works on bows. I know the description doesn't say bow, but the word bow is in bow gun, so... Alright, with all those tips out of the way, let's move on to Striker. This'll be quick. Striker can't power shot. Oof. At least you get a third Hunter Art slot? Moving on from tragedy to travesty, we have Aerial Bow. Unfortunately, just like the other mid-air attacks, Aerial Bow is not safe for life, so I'm gonna censor it for the kids on YouTube. Aerial Bow, like Striker, can't power shot on the ground, but it also can't arc shot, so you have even fewer options than Striker somehow. Boost jump off of a monster, or get in midair some other way, and you'll be able to do an extremely ghetto combo. Press A up to twice in midair to shoot your level 2 shot downwards. This shot will always land in critical distance, but is hard locked to level 2, and is not actually a power shot. I don't know either. You can end the combo at any time by pressing the charge shot button, making you shoot towards the center of the screen, but not cheating out critical distance because Capcom hates you. You can also press X and A for a melee attack, I guess, but why are you doing this as bow? Time to get out of the depression fest by going to Adept. Adept bow loses arc shots, and also the back hop because you're forced to forward roll now. You can also press A before you fire a shot to instantly fire a power shot instead. I guess this can work for activating True Shot Up on shorter windows? After an Adept dodge, you can press the charge shot button to instantly ready a level 3 shot. Going from good to great, we have Valor. In any state, you can't arc shot, and if you're charging a shot, you can press A to perform a dodge instead of Y. Y is obviously the Valor Sheath button. However, you can charge up a Valor arc shot by sheathing and pressing the charge shot button. This Valor arc shot is kind of a modified version of the base arc shot, and obviously is determined by your bow's base arcshot type. Also, it ignores the charge levels of your bow, only charging up to 3 levels outside of Valor state. Focus shoots out an arrow that then explodes 3 times. Unlike normal arc shots, this has critical distance, and landing in critical distance increases the number of pellets that hit. Wide shoots out a weaker arrow that then explodes up to 6 times on contact. Like Focus, it also has critical distance, which boosts pellet hit count. Blast shoots 3 weak arrows that explode when they hit the ground. The explosion is way more powerful than the arrow, so focus on landing the explosion. Aim for the legs or body. Oh, and this doesn't have critical distance. Outside of Valor state, you can't perform a back roll, and if you move while charging, you charge more slowly. You do charge up more quickly if you stand still, though. You also can't perform a power shot. In Valor state, you do regain your back roll, but unlike Guild, you don't gain an instant charge if you press the charge shot button afterwards. You also gain the Valor power shot, which also consumes more stamina to fire, but repeats the last shot fired, while also dealing more damage. Standing still while charging also lets you charge much faster, while the penalty for moving around is removed. Also, your Valor arc shot charge can go to level 4, and you can power shot it. Yay? Here's a mostly unique to Valor tip. While in Valor state, if you just tap your charge shot button, you have enough charge speed to get to level 2 instantly. You can fire that one, then power shot to instantly get to level 3. This technique, known as insta-release, is pretty handy for pushing out damage in tighter windows. Back to mediocrity with Alchemy style. Like Striker, Alchemy can't power shot, but also you don't instantly charge if you charge shot after a back roll. You do gain natural reload speed +1, letting you load coatings faster. Also, you can press R and Y after any dodge, including a back roll, to instantly perform an Alchemy barrel sheath. Unlike Blade Masters, the Alchemy Whetstone is replaced with the Alchemy Coating, which doesn't boost damage, but increases your HA charge rate by 50% if you hit in critical distance, and 20% otherwise. You also charge the Alchemy Barrel faster by hitting the monster in critical distance. Let's look at how effective these styles are in practice. The life of a bowman in GU is one of 2 extremes. You either have access to power shots and life is good, or you don't, and you experience endless amounts of suffering as long as Capcom insists that arc shots are a thing, guys, please use them! Obviously, power shots are good, so since Valor has 2 of them, it's doubly as good. Watch a bow time attack on YouTube and they'll always be using Valor, and practically cleaving through monsters, or even flinch locking them in the case of Ukanlos. They do this partially thanks to the re-aim glitch I mentioned earlier. Where once staggers used to be something you had to avoid, the re-aim glitch converts those into bigger damage opportunities, much like Blade Masters. If only it didn't mess with your camera so much. You absolutely do not need to do this to get through the game, let's be clear. Heck, I did it with Guild. It's still nice to know about. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows with Valor Bow. If you can't be aggressive enough and don't know when the monster will stagger, you absolutely can and will lose a lot of damage, mostly because you'll have to stop every now and then to recharge your Valor gauge, which can suck. If you're super trigger happy with your power shots, you'll also lose a lot of damage as your arrows miss, though it does happen with all of the power shot styles. From Valor, there's kind of a huge gulf in power, but Adept is still very usable and relatively strong. The ability to instantly retort against attacks with a reposition and an instant charge is useful, letting you maintain aggression against the monsters instead of being forced to roll and lose all your charge. It's also not as punishing as Valor, since you won't have any forced downtime, but the loss in damage can still be felt. Another huge step down in power is Guild. As alluded to, arc shots are useless, and you don't really gain a huge amount of benefits with 2 HA slots. You can look really cool if you do a back roll instant charge, but that's just kind of a weaker version of what Adept can do, and it eats a whole bunch of stamina to boot. It can work if you need to reposition and charge simultaneously, I guess. Unfortunately, Guild is the last style on the precipice of suffering, so now we'll enter the chasm. All the styles without power shot have suffering magnified 100-fold, making you suffer by forcing you to charge your shots constantly. Striker and Alchemy are very similar in power level, but we'll cover Alchemy first. Bow's constant struggles with file management can give a tiny bit of value to Alchemy coatings, but I don't know if alchemy coatings, and the ability to swap coatings faster, outpaces the passive hunter art charge rate of Striker. If you're prone to coping, you can possibly take this with status coatings in order to cycle status faster, but that's hardly a benefit. Also, bow hunter arts are aggressively okay to bad. On the other hand, we have Striker. It exists. Barely. As mentioned, you still don't have power shots, but at least you can do a back roll instant charge like Guild can? Eh. There really isn't anything to mention beyond that, aside from, I guess, you also charge Hunter Arts slightly faster. And now we descend into the depths of the chasm of disappointment with Aerial. If you haven't gotten the joke so far, Aerial Bow is in contention for one of the worst weapon style combos in the entire game. You may ask, why? Several reasons. First, jumping off of a monster as a gunner weapon is already ill-advised. You'll have to close distance, meaning that unlike aerial Blade Master weapons, you're committing to losing damage even before you vault off of the monster. Not to mention, if you vault at bad times, your squishy face is bound to get fly swatted out of the air even harder. Bow specifically has the worst of it, being forced to effectively stand still as Bow, doing the equivalent of masturbating in midair, leaving you extremely prone to getting smacked. At least the bowguns can vault off of the monster in different directions afterwards. Finally, and most importantly, you can only fire level 2 charge shots in midair. This is equivalent to taking a 33% damage cut compared to a charge 3. Not to mention, you can't really aim your downward shots in midair, so even with the cheated critical distance, you can still end up shooting a shitty shot hit zone. Plus, with the forward shot, you're ending your combo early, and you need to actually hit at critical distance, and also it's a pain in the ass to aim. If you're one of those people that think they're smarter than they really are and about to coat post in the comments, no. Spamming shots as a gunner is one of the worst things you can do, since you'll be burning through supplies and dealing much less damage per coating you eat up, so it absolutely does not make up the damage difference. Valor also can practically match Aerial's spam, but with actual power behind each of their shots. Still not convinced? Remind yourself that Aerial only has one HA slot, while Striker and Alchemy at least have 3, so they can at least use triple volley or something. God, what a fucking disappointment. While we're here, let's also analyze the arrow types and their place in the metagame. The best shot types are typically heavy or rapid. Heavy wins, but only on technicality. Rapid would technically win in previous games more often, but thanks to the rapid damage bug, you'll see a slight damage cut. What is the rapid damage bug? Basically, the game can't process multiple damage hits on the same frame, sometimes making your arrows slip past certain hit zones or even slip out of critical distance. This is especially thanks to power shots, which boosts your arrow's speed. So sometimes your hits will just be eaten up without it actually counting. This affects anything that hits multiple times in short succession, including barrel bombs and, coincidentally, spread arrows. Spread doesn't need to be bullied anymore in this game, man. It already has enough going on at home. Anyway, your default shot should be heavy. Good in a wide variety of circumstances thanks to its single-shot nature, its boosted stagger damage, and in the few circumstances that it matters in, ability to ignore anti-projectile effects, such as Teostra's Heat Aura or Stonefist's Huge Claw. Rapid is similarly good, but falls a bit short. It's typically used when you either need the elemental advantage, such as Fire or Dragon on Chameleos, or if the hit zone you're looking to shoot is kinda awkward to get critical distance on with heavy. Think of something like Valstrax's Wing Arm Connectors or Diablos' Tail. Pierce is used in extremely niche circumstances. Monsters that have awkward or very long and good shot hit zones where just sitting at mid-range is a bad idea will often favor Pierce. Think Durambros, Plesioff, and the personal choice, Devil Joe. Also, Atlka, but that's mainly thanks to Capcom and not actually the fight itself. Spread is unfortunately bad. No, not because the shot type itself is weak. It had some niches back in 4U despite Camus Edition T-posing all over the meta back then. No, it's because of how weak the bow selection is, and also the rapid bow bug. If you take a glance at all bows that have spread shots on charge 3, you'll notice one thing. Very few of them exceed 330 raw. And of those that do, none of them carry power 2s, which is a very good sign. Maybe Capcom didn't want aerial bow absolutely wrecking the meta or something? I don't know. And no, the weathered bow is not good. Still, I personally find use for spread on certain matchups where the monster in question just loves to gap close on you without letting you take a break. If they gap close all the time, Rapid and Pierce are less useful because you'll be forced to move constantly into critical distance as opposed to the monster gap closing into your critical distance. Granted, Heavy's critical distance also starts pretty close up, but for the monsters that are just so awkward to fight as bow, such as Seregius, spread can be worth considering in these rare cases. Let's shift to covering bow hunter arts. Triple Volley does what it says on the tin. You fire 2 shots quickly, which have piercing properties. You then ready a third shot, which you can aim to adjust for monster movements, then fire after a short time. Increasing ranks of Triple Volley increases the damage of the final shot, but also makes it take longer to fire. Note that, like other shots, Triple Volley does have a critical distance, but it does last as long as Pierce level 5's critical distance, so just don't fire it at point blank. Haste Rain has you fire an arrow that rains a stimulant down on yourself. While buffed, your shots charge faster, and you move as quickly as you dash. The higher the rank of Haste Rain, the longer the effects last. For Blade Wire, I'm gonna be dramatic and read the game's description verbatim, just because I think it's the most appropriate way to reveal what it does. Binds 2 arrows together with wire to create a flying blade when fired. All non-arc shot and power shot charged arrows are swapped temporarily for cutting wire. Cannot be coated, but can sever a monster's tail. Tactical Retreat lets you leap in the direction you're moving in, or in the direction you're facing if you're idle. While in this animation, you're completely invulnerable like the Absolute Hunter arts. While you're jumping, you automatically fire a shot in the opposite direction that always triggers critical distance. You can press and hold the charge shot button during the animation to instead hold the shot to fire it later. Higher ranks of the Hunter art boosts the affinity of the fired shot and increases its base charge level. Also of note, unlike the Absolute Hunter arts, the invulnerability window does not start immediately. You do have to actually start the animation before you gain it, so preemptively use this. Time for me to tell you how good these Hunter arts are. Out of them, 2 are obvious winners, I guess. Haste Rain and Tactical Retreat. Haste Rain's effect is pretty strong, letting you walk around more attacks while letting you both save on stamina and expanding your windows of opportunity, thanks to the charge threshold decrease effect. The uptime is kind of bad, but it's a high priority worth considering. Tactical Retreat acts as an exclusive absolute readiness for bow, letting you position more aggressively and technically porting some of Adept's functionality to other styles, thanks to its instant charge nature. You'd use it in cases where Haste Rain would be overkill, or in other words, where the monster's behavior would let you comfortably charge for a while, rendering the charge speed effect redundant. Just make sure you save your shot, or you'll be sad when you miss the blind-fired arrow. Also, make sure you're in a good position afterwards to actually hit the shot soon after, or else you won't gain any benefit over absolute readiness. Speaking of which, in certain matchups, absolute readiness is actually pretty good. For bow, absolute readiness automatically loads the currently selected coating, and lets you dodge simultaneously, so any post-dodge shot can be more easily aimed at the cost of not being instantaneous, which isn't that big of an issue if you're playing Valor. Plus, it keeps you unsheathed. Triple Volley has good damage on paper. Unfortunately, that's also how you'll feel about your armor when you get hit during the animation. This thing takes its sweet time to actually fire its big damage shot, which is kind of the whole reason you're using it in the first place. Because of it, you'll only end up using this on downs, which, if you're playing bow, you won't get solo at all on most monsters. It does have quite the impressive range, though, so if you're far enough, you might get away with using it. I wouldn't necessarily rely on it, though. I used to call Blade Wire Meme Wire back in Gen, and unfortunately for everyone, that name still sticks in GU. This shot pierces monsters, but also has the same critical distance as Rapid? In my experience, the Blade Wire's pierce is also not nearly as consistent as actual piercing arrows, while also having pierce properties. The long-ass hitbox it has also hurts more than it helps because you'll definitely end up using hits on shitty hit zones which are located anywhere near the zone you want to hit. Also, to reiterate, this thing replaces your shot type and also prevents you from using vials. making this a dead HA until you accidentally use it or after you use up all your power files. Funnily enough, this was worse back in Gen, where it also replaced your power shot and also dealt less damage, to the point where actually just using arrow swipes was better and faster than using this hunter art at severing tails. What a goddamn travesty. Before we cover bow progression, let's briefly talk about files in the coding compendium. Bow files are your lifeblood and function as the ammo of bows. There are several types, but not all bows have access to all files. You can check whether or not a bow supports a type of coding by examining its equipment details. If a coding is highlighted, then it's supported, and if it's grayed out, then it doesn't. You can use certain armor skills in order to let your bow load different coatings, but honestly, this isn't worth it unless it's specifically power files on a bow that doesn't natively support them. Also, for an extra bit of pain, only low rarity talismans can have a significant amount of points invested into these coding plus skills, so I hope you kept your early game talismans. One last shout out. Your bow also has a page labeled Coding Boosts. Basically, it enhances your bow even further, while a coding listed here is applied. Most bows won't have any coding boosts, though. Power coatings are a staple. They increase your attack. Straightforward. If your bow doesn't have them by default, then consider putting that bow into the litter box. Coding boosts increase your power by 20%. Element coatings are new to generations, and boost your bow's elemental damage output. This should be considered a nice addition rather than anything you'd actively want, especially because you only have 20 to 30 of them. Coding boosts increase your element by 20%. Close range coatings, or C-range coatings, allow point-blank shots to count as critical distance, and increase your arrow's sharpness for those arrow swipes. These are kinda limited in use because you only have 20 of them. The Ceregius bows do have a coding boost for them, increasing your attack by 50% while applied. This makes them level 2 power coatings, which is nice. Next we have a gamut of status-related coatings, which I'll be collectively referring to as the status coatings. While applied, they replace your bow's element or status with the flavor of status that the coating mentions, and the status is applied 100% of the time while you have the coating equipped. How much status you apply varies with each type of shot, shown here. Coating boosts further increase the status you deal by 20%. Finally, we have paint coatings, which every bow can equip. They do the same thing as paintballs. Pretty self-explanatory. Alright, let's cover progression. Unfortunately, unlike Blade Master weapons, gunners can't simply go from Petrified to Obsidian to Elder. If you like rapid arrows, take Petrified Bow through low rank and a majority of high rank, then swap to Teostra's Bow, the Bow of Light and Courage, at Village 10, which remains relevant until G2, where you start to replace it with Nurse Shock, and eventually Scylla Weave in G3. Heavy arrows start out with the Hunter Stout Bow, replacing it with Yekla Arc in Village 6, where it remains your primary option. Optionally replacing it with the Bow of Light and Courage in Village 10 as mentioned, all the way up until Endgame, where it becomes the best bow in the game. There are also other bows which you take to Braum matchups, but that's weapons at a high level. For armor, it's also complicated. You do start out the same as Blade Masters with Buja, but you'll only get attack up M instead of attack up L unless you use some weapon slots or get an early slotted charm. Then you'll have to wait until later in low rank, when you gain access to Rathalos in order to mix up a Moscarl and Rathalos set, named you Weakness Exploit and Focus. If you don't need Focus, especially if you're playing Adept or Valor, then consider getting full Rathalos instead. In high rank, I recommend upgrading the Moscarl parts into Moscarl S, then the Rathalos parts into Rathalos S. Do note that you may have to change up your decoration distributions when doing so. Beginning at the end of high rank, I strongly recommend that you begin to mix your sets. Gunners can't really get a complete set of skills from any particular full set, so I can't really recommend anything specific here. If you want pointers on good armor pieces, look into the G-Rank progression section of the guide, but otherwise I'll just gloss over this because there's so many possibilities. Try to make a set with your chosen shot type up, Focus if you need it, then True Shot up, Weakness Exploit, or P Defender, then other damage boosters that you can fit in. Alright, low rank. Of course you have your Petrified Bow, which you'd best get used to the sight of, since it'll be your primary rapid option for most of low rank and high rank. Alternatively, you also got the Hunter's Stout Bow, your earliest heavy option, which also upgrades directly into the best heavy bow in the game. You can start to train yourself on Heavy's unique shooting arc with this guy. Like Blade Masters, Booshapoo becomes available early on, but is limited to attack up M instead of L because of how the skill point distributions work. If you want to dip yourself into a few elemental options, the Sonic Bow in Village 3 becomes available, and is useful for Thunder Weak monsters for the last half of low rank. The Type 64 Multi-Bow from Nebelsnarf is also useful for Water Weak monsters on occasion. If you're having trouble with Nebelsnarf, consider making the Blango Fur Bow, an Ice Rapid Bow which eventually gains early access to Power 2s. In Village 5, Mizutsune and its Blessed Rain become available, which often competes with Nebelsnarf for the position of Water Rapid Bow. Unfortunately, it eventually loses, but it'll remain useful through the end of high rank. Also, Rathalos becomes available, with which you can make a mix set with Moscarl in order to get Weakness, Exploit, and Focus, if you're not playing Valor or Adept. If you are, you should probably just make full Rathalos instead. In Village 6, you gain access to quite a few things. Yekla Arc is the initial form of what eventually becomes the best heavy bow in the game, but is also strong throughout progression as a heavy option. Ashen Wrath, Glavenus' bow, is the only fire rapid bow in the game, which de facto makes it the best. At least it remains useful through high rank, and has good enough stats for certain matchups in G rank progression. Swinging into high rank, your Petrified Bow gains access to Power File level 2s, which I'll refer to from now on as P2s or Power 2s. It's pretty useful for the first half of high rank, sharing its time with Ashen Wrath, which unfortunately does not gain Power 2s until its final high rank upgrade. It's still good as a Fire Rapid Bow regardless, because it's the only Fire Rapid Bow. Speaking of element, we have the Type 64 Multi-Bow back, which gains relevance faster than Mizutsune's thanks to its immediate access to Power 2s in the onset of high rank. If you're struggling with Plesioth, I recommend a Pierce Bow. Try the Plume Bow from Great Macau, and shoot along Plesioth's belly. Village 8 grants you upgrades for the Yekla Arc, also granting it access for P2s. Blessed Rain also returns as a slightly more water-leaning option for Gravios or Uragon, though it doesn't have access to P2s until its final high-rank upgrade. The Sonic Bow also makes its last appearance as your Thunder Rapid Bow of choice. Finally, your ice option is, as always, the Blango Fur Bow, which gains access to both Power 1 and 2s for its final high-rank upgrade. Pretty great! As for armor, you do gain Moscarl S as an upgrade to a Moscarl Rathalos mix set. Make sure to shift around your decoration distribution in order to compensate for the upgrade. Village 9 offers high-rank Rathalos for any Rathalos Moscarl mix set, but also more generally an upgrade to Rathalos S. On the weapons side, however, aside from a previously mentioned Type 64 Multi-Bow upgrade, there isn't anything else to mention. Village 10 is mainly the same story, though if you're having trouble with Devil Joe, I recommend the Thunder Pierce option. Try Rajang's Bow, Beast King Thunder Bow, which also coincidentally helps with Plesioth as well. Look, I know Pierce isn't the best on Joe, but I certainly find it easier than trying to snipe the belly with Rapid while Joe wants to take bites out of you. Afterwards, beating Hub Diablos allows you to get a few important upgrades. Teostra's Bow, the Bow of Light and Courage, otherwise known as the Toast Bow or otherwise known by me as the Meme Bow. This bow dominated the entirety of Gen's metagame, and in this game remains dominant all the way up until G2. So it's very useful to snag, even if you don't plan on staying around in high rank. If you do, so much the better. The Herald's Battle Bow, formerly the Yekla Arc, also receives a fine upgrade, but will generally be weaker than the Bow of Light and Courage except for extremely long hunts. At this point, I expect you to begin mixing your sets with whatever charms you have available. In rough orders of priority, getting your respective shot type up skill, normal rapid up for rapid, or heavy heavy up for heavy, is core, as is the relatively cheap true shot up, which boosts the damage of your power shots by a staggering 20%. Massive. Afterwards is focus, mandatory for any style that isn't Valor or Adept, then weakness exploit. At this point your skill budget will be very low, so just try to get any other damage boosters from there. In G rank, your opener will probably either be the Bow of Light and Courage you just picked up from the last rank, or the Herald's Battle Bow, which gains the ability to load both P1 and P2s. Very valuable for any kind of bow, but especially powerful for this guy. In G2, the Rapid Bow position starts to be shared between Nurse Shock, the Yukumo Spirit Bow, and the Bow of Light and Courage. Despite being a bit of raw down, the Toast Bow's natural blast may allow it to catch up to the other Rapid Bows, especially in shorter hunts. For longer hunts, I'd suggest either of the first two bows, but especially the Yukumo Spirit Bow, due to its access to P1 and P2s. Swapping to armors, some valuable pieces could be Senator GX4 Normal Rapid Up, Conchu Cross or High Metal Z for heavy up, Blango GX, Volvodin or Moscarl Cross for focus, or Roktor Coat Cross for true shot up, and Malfestio Cross for weakness exploit. For specific matchups, Nargacuga's Night Flight is your please-off option with its high affinity and access to P1 and P2s. For Lao, you're gonna want a Dragon Pierce bow, so Val returns as a mainstay with its Dragon Star Hubar. Shoot often, bring Mega Dash Juices and Might Seeds, and for God's sake, shoot its crotch. In G3, your Herald's Battle Bow gains another upgrade, being the first major bow to reach above 300 raw. Nice. Your rapid options include Scylla Weave with Celtis Queen parts, or the Scholarly Bow. Yep, that's right, it's back. Which only gives up 10 raw for access to both Power 1 and Power 2s. Part of your Elemental Suite also returns with the Scorpion Zir and the Ashen Pride. For armor parts, the most important piece will easily be Glyph Tacit's XR, or for males, Genesis Tacit's XR, which grants a massive +8 Tenderizer and a single slot. In G4, the Harbinger's Battle Bow maxes out, granting it a massive 350 raw, perfect for taking on many monsters with heavy. For rapid, you have the Tigrex Whisker with 340 raw and access to P1 and P2s. Finally, your specific matchup Pierce Bow will be the Avidia Bow from Nargacuga, for both Devil Joe and Atl Ka. Yes, Atl Ka makes you use Pierce on it. To divert a tiny bit from the weapon guide, we're gonna have to briefly explain Bow versus Atl, because it's certainly an experience. Yeah, spoilers incoming, obviously, if you cared about that. To make a convoluted explanation really short, Capcom screwed up. When making the hurt boxes for Atl's mech, their hurt boxes cover the entirety of the walkable portion of the mech, making any sort of rapid, heavy, or spread bow nigh unusable, or at the very least, too slow to kill Atl's mech. To solve this, we use Pierce in order to pierce past the bad hit zones and hit the super shiny gold cocoon areas. Unfortunately, Atl herself isn't that receptive to Pierce arrows, the only shot weak spot being her tail. I'd actually love to use something like heavy on her, but too bad, the mech ruins everything. It's not a terrible fight, but I hate being forced to use a specific type of bow because Capcom messed up their hitboxes. Now that we're past Atl, we're in Endgame. Let's discuss. Choosing a bow is much more linked to any given monster matchup than most other weapons. For example, how long are your charging windows? What kinds of shot types are most appropriate for the monster that you're hunting? Whether or not you need elements, how long the fight is, how often you can safely land power shots, where you have to aim, among others. However, there are a few signs to look for when looking for a good bow. The first is level 4 or 5 of the shot type you want in the charge level 3 slot. This is important because it maximizes your damage, and charge 3 is the most common charge that you'll fire with very few exceptions. Number 2, does it have access to power 2s? If it doesn't, this is typically a deal breaker. In endgame, you can't really afford to screw around with power 1s or, God forbid, no power files at all. They're super important to your play, and the only bow I'll recommend without it gets used power file all to compensate, while having other aspects that make it worth using. Number 3 is high raw. Anywhere from 320 raw and up is good, and having element on bow is typically a downside that only a few elementally sensitive matchups would compensate for, such as Gravios, Chameleos, or Kushal da Aura. Alright, time for armor skills. There are a few bow staples you'll want to be aware of. First up is the shot type up skills, including normal and rapid up, pierce up, pellet spread up, and heavy up. These skills are effectively a conditionless damage boost on your shots, with spread even getting a big plus 30% attack boost, as opposed to just 10% attack from the rest of them. Unfortunately, it doesn't exactly salvage spread, but we'll get to that. Number 2 is focus. On styles that aren't Adept or Valor, this is a staple since it helps with stamina management and also tangentially boosts your damage by letting you shoot higher charge levels in shorter windows. Adept and Valor can cheat out their shots, so focus is less mandatory on them. Why is that, you ask? Basically, while you're holding a shot at maximum charge, you're not getting value from focus. This is because when you hold shots, you could have started your charge later, and still have gotten the same shot level from it. This is especially true on Valor, which has natural charge rate buffs. This makes Focus's effect not have as big of an impact. What is consistently impactful, however, is number 3, True Shot Up. On styles that don't deserve to be deleted from the game, True Shot Up is a big damage boost, its only condition being that you fire power shots, which is your key to dealing big damage as bow anyway. It also affects arc shots, but the last time anyone used arc shots seriously was in 3U. Number 4 is load up. This is less important, but load up is key to a few good bows, unlocking their 4th charge level. Now, not all bows are made equal, and even less so their 4th charge level. There's 2 different good targets for load up on bows. The first is when charge 4's shot type matches charge 3, since you can power a shot from the charge 3 into charge 4. The second is when it unlocks a powerful shot type compared to the 3rd charge. This means that in matchups with long windows between charges, you'll be able to charge all the way up in those windows, giving you even more damage. To be clear, not every bow wants load up, but it is mandatory on the bows that gain most of their utility from it. And lastly, affinity boosters. Once you're done with the mandatory skills, it's back to damage for you. Weakness exploit, repeat offender, critical boost, challenger, it's all here. There's also some other niche skills which you can see occasionally on bow, so let's mention them right now. Use Power File level 1 is pretty sweet on bows with only Power 2s, since it effectively gives you 70 extra files to play with. Unfortunately, it's kinda hard to get sometimes because you can only get it from decorations or on lower rarity talismans. If you're doing a bow playthrough of GU, keep those Power C+ talismans you find early on because they're a pain to farm otherwise. Ammo Saver is more accessible in late game, but it's marginally less effective. On average, it gives you 14 extra coats for power since it activates 20% of the time. I personally don't like relying on RNG though, so if you really want extra power files, I'd consider using bows with native power 1 and 2 access. The element attack skills are also there if you need them on elemental matchups, but they're extremely rare mostly because raw bows dominate the majority of matchups. They're pretty good on monsters such as Lao, Gravios, or Crystal Beard Uragan, however. Alright, enough of this info dump. We've got the best endgame bows to talk about. Let's talk about the bows in sequence, going from heavy to rapid to pierce to spread. As was alluded to before, the Harbinger's Battle Bow is the prime heavy bow and the prime bow in general, with its massive 350 raw. Heavy shot is practically carried wholesale by this bow alone, since it also packs both power 2s and power 1s for longevity. Sure, it doesn't have any natural affinity, but if you have big number, nothing else really matters. Try to get a bunch of affinity on this bow, since it scales just so well with it. Beyond the Firmaments, Soulseer Mizutsune's bow is a good heavy bow alternative, sacrificing a bit of raw for a fairly large 40 water, deviant boost, and power 2 access. The main point of note here is that it's a nicer bow for playing in multiplayer, since this guy has arc shot focus and not blast, which will knock your allies around. It's also fine in solo play too if the monster is slightly weak to water and is compatible with load up. Again, you don't always have to take it, but it can be nice if you can afford the charge time. Chthonic Maelstrom, Drill Tusk Tetsukabra's bow, is also a nice heavy alternative, giving up 10 raw in exchange for load up compatibility. Snowdrift, Blengonga's bow, is also notable for having good raw and triple slots if you need it. The rapid bow slot is weird. I'm going to recommend what I call the Big Four to start off with. Wepwawet, Atlkaz's bow, has a massive 360 raw, but demands load up in order to unlock its rapid level 5 shot on charge 4. Because of this, you need to charge up all the way every single time, which can be a hindrance in certain hunts. If you're looking for an easier bow to play with, there's the Sacred Bow G, which is similar to Wepwawet in that it also uses load up and also has 3 slots. It has significantly lower raw, at 330, but it also has all of the status coats if you want to play around with those. Its charge 3 shot is more usable than Wepwawet's, so it's easier to use at the cost of a lower power ceiling. The former second best bow in the game is the Scylla Web Dart. This Nursilla Rapid Bow has a solid 320 raw and great 30% natural affinity, with power 2 access, which makes stacking affinity relatively easy. However, its access to only power 2s does mean that when it runs out, it starts to lose damage. Not the next bow though, which will be Deadeye Tragedy. Deadeye Tragedy trades some of its affinity for slightly higher raw, power 1 access, and deviant boost. The power 1 access means that this bow will have a bit of longevity for those hyper hunts, which is nice, especially if you're not using Valor. The only tragedy here is that you have to do all 15 levels of Deadeye. Let's swap over to the Elemental Suite with Triumphant Testament. It comes up in a few Dragon Weak monster matchups, and is the one exception to the no power coats rule. It's good against the rock monsters, such as Uragan and Gravios, as well as Chameleos. Just make sure that you get use power file all and load up, unfortunately narrowing the free skill space you have available by quite a lot. Rounding out the elemental suite, we have Orcus Sagittus, a rare 9s and ogre bow. Unlike in progression, the Sonic bow doesn't have power 2s, so this guy can take its place on Thunder weak matchups, such as Kushala de Ora and Silverwind Nargacuga. Let's give a brief shout out to some other rapid choices. Tigrex Diversa, the Tigrex bow, has high raw and a full suite of coatings, its weakness being the negative affinity it has. Grimclaw Roar is similar, but it trades P1s for the Deviant boost. Sedition Piercer, the much less cooler sounding relative of Kama Sedition, Seregios' bow, requires load up, but has bonus P2s in the form of the C-range coatings. Pierce bow's got two options. The first is Sunlight Gale, from Silverwind Nargacuga. It has an OK 320 raw with a great 35% natural affinity, making weakness exploits crits very consistent. Plus, it also has both power 1 and 2 access. Load up here can be okay, but you may want to switch it out depending on matchup. Just ask yourself if the monster in question gives you the windows to charge to level 3. Oh, it also has Deviant boost, but you're never gonna notice. Same goes for Rustrazor Striker, the Rustrazor Senator bow, which trades its affinity for higher raw. Either bow is fine. From the disappointingly bad spread bow roster, we have the least bad of the bunch. Ethereal Adakia has the largest amount of raw at 320, while also having power 2 and 1 access naturally. It also has some slots. That's about all you can say about it. There's an alternative in the form of the Devil's Council, the Chameleos bow, which trades P1s for an extra slot and a bit of extra raw. Traditionally, bow has been memed to hell and back, mainly because in recent Monhuns there has always been that one bow. It was the Kelby Slingshot back in 3U, but some people believe that the Brachydios bow is better. Kama Sedition in 4U, and the Bow of Light and Courage in Gen. These bows were so good that it warped the entire bow metagame around themselves, and it led to countless jokes about the one bow main in Capcom sneaking in as one overpowered bow in every game. GU, by contrast, is certainly brimming in variety. Yes, the Harbinger's Battle Bow certainly kicks some major ass, but Heavy's unique trajectory means that Rapid Bow can win out in certain matchups, and some niche matchups also ask for a dash of element. Styles were also a big injection to Bow's power, but mainly Adept and Valor. Valor alone is extremely powerful, able to stunlock monsters such as Ukanos with the right setup, and just dealing tons of damage, given that you had the skill to make the best use of your windows. And can you believe that Power Shots as a mechanic wasn't a part of Bow's moveset until Generations? Heck, it was only introduced as an alternative to Arc Shots in 4, and was a big part of why Kama's Edition just dominated over in 4U. At the same time, though, arts certainly offer exactly half of value, that half being Tactical Retreat and Haste Rain. And you don't even take those a lot of the time, not to mention the absolutely cursed Triple Volley and unspeakably bad Blade Wire. Also, half of the styles on Bow are really detrimental and crippling to your damage output, with Ariel competing for the infamous title of worst weapon style combo in the game. It really is something when you compare Valor Bow directly to Ariel Bow. Overall, I think Bow received enough love in GU, with Valor absolutely deleting monsters of a capable enough user, but I wish that Capcom came up with better ideas for the arts and styles. Having half of your options be actual bricks is a feels bad moment, and no matter how much you fear getting into degenerate situations again, like the Kelby Slingshot, I think taking risks with Bow and having them pay off is a good idea compared to more hold the charge or release the shoot, like games before 3U. So now, go forth and make pincushions of those monsters.